Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Swan Valley Statutory Planning Committee meeting of Wednesday, the 12th of March, 2025. Welcome to those in person and online. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be available via the Commission's website or YouTube. Committee members may refer to technical devices such as phones and laptops throughout the meeting to help them in consideration of the material before them. Starting the meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that we meet on the lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and pay respects to elders past and present. Today, in terms of apologies and leave of absence, we do have Commissioner Heron on a leave of absence, but all other members are here today, so welcome. And item 1.3, disclosure of interests. Are there any disclosures, members? I have them recorded, so there are none today. Thank you very much. And any disclosures of representation on the two items before us today? No? Thank you very much. Item 1.5, declaration of due consideration. Can all members please indicate that they have received and considered the agenda today? Thank you very much. And confirmation of the previous minutes for our meeting on the 12th of February 2025. Are there any issues or questions to raise in relation to the minutes? Right, happy to adopt an accurate record. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Commissioner Brooks, seconded by Member Zanino. Any dissent? Carried. Very much. So we will now go to deputations, and today we do have 3 in-person deputations and 3 written deputations. So Sam, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome everyone that is present this morning in order to deputation to the Swan Valley Statutory Planning Committee, either in person or via Zoom. You will be invited to join the table or promoted to a panelist via Zoom to deliver your deputation this morning. You have been advised of your allocated time, which we manage by a timer which will appear on the screen and count down the allocated time. If you do have a PowerPoint presentation this morning, this will be displayed on the screen throughout your deputation, and you're requested to advise us as you wish to advance the slides. So moving to the first deputation this morning on item 3.1 on the agenda, which is the development application for the food beverage production at Lot 3, West Swan Road, West Swan. We're inviting Joe Algieri, Lillian Yeck and Jake Corliff from Altus Planning in person. Thank you. Would you like to join us at the table?
Good morning, Joe, Lillian and Jake. Welcome to the meeting.
Good morning.
I'd like to start your deputation.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Committee members and staff, good morning to you all. Altus Planning is very proud to have been involved in this proposal for you. With some trepidation and excitement, it was our first proposal under the new Swan Valley Planning Act and particularly the scheme. Lillian, to my right, has been diligently working on this for almost 18 months. We did want to make sure that in putting our name to a proposal, every matter had been addressed, and our own past experiences, there are always challenges in dealing with development proposals in this part of the world. I don't have very much at all to say today because I'm very pleased that we fully endorse the officer recommendation for approval. We have also gone thoroughly through the recommended conditions, and they are of no concern to Jake and company at Yahava Coffee. As the report says, it's essentially the relocation of an existing operation that's now been part of the fabric of the Swan Valley for some 15 years or thereabouts. It is essentially for a permanent home for Yahava Coffee, given that they are currently on leased premises. In a planning sense, we again fully endorse the commentary and the assessment in the report. It is consistent with the food and beverage production land use, and the scale and the context and the form of development, we say, is wholly consistent with the planning framework. It has been carefully considered and sympathetically designed with respect to context, and certainly when we prepare planning applications, context is everything, and it's particularly pronounced in the Swan Valley. It's a typical viticulture lot, unfortunately, like many others, hasn't had productive viticulture for many years. But the rural aesthetic or the ambience of the site and the lot will be retained, because being such a reasonably large site, the proportion of the development is reasonably small and furthermore set back from the road. We have spent a lot of time considering compatibility issues. It's not new to me. There's always the concern that from the agricultural production activities, matters such as spray drift can be of concern. We've made sure in this instance that car parking areas are appropriately set back. There is appropriate vegetation on the boundary, and there will also be some discrete signage. So having regard to all of the above, we say it's a compatible development consistent with the planning and the policy framework. All traffic and broader amenity issues have been comprehensively investigated and detailed in our application, and we respectfully request your support this morning for conditional approval, and any of us would be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate your deputation this morning. Members, any questions for Joe or the team? Any questions? Go
Yes.
ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. The property that this development is going to be built on was originally a vineyard. Are the proponents going to rehabilitate the vines that are there or replant new vines as a component to the development?
I'll let you jump in, but as my understanding is that there's a long driveway down the centre.
Yeah.
An important part of the aesthetic and the ambience is retaining some of those vines and introducing other vegetation as well. There's certainly no intention, at least on a commercial sense, to try and expand or reintroduce a vine on the property. There's certainly no intention just to wholesale clear all of it from there, because that's not in your Harbour Coffee's interest, and I don't think patrons would be pleased with that type of scenario either. If anything more to add to that, Jake?
There's about 50 metres of vines on the road, the frontage, and we'll be retaining and restoring those vines. Absolutely. So the visual appeal from the road frontage will certainly maintain the vine.
Sorry, can I just jump in as well? Because we did have this discussion before with the assessing officer, and her suggestion is actually to have glory vines instead, because the maintenance of vines is actually quite difficult and technical. And so from like an aesthetic perspective, a glory vines would have a similar, appeal to a productive vines, and it can be maintained that way.
Okay. Further to that question, I mean, in the report, it categorically states that there are other venues in close proximity. They mention the Margaret River Chocolate Company, Providore, HDH Fresh, West Swan, the Grumpy Grapes, Lavender Bristow, and Lancaster Wines. All of those properties or developments, when they were approved, were basically told they had to have agricultural component on the property. I mean, the Margaret River Chocolate Company had to plant vines. The Lavender Company, they planted lavender. That's still agricultural. So all those properties have got an agricultural component. I mean, this should also have an agricultural component, whether it's coffee, whether it's vineyard. I mean, planting shrubs and trees sounds great. It probably looks great, but it does nothing for the valley or for the neighbours, because trees and shrubs attract birds, and they're going to be a problem to the commercial growers in close proximity.
News.
So the question is, it categorically states in the revised Swan Valley Planning Act of 2020 that standalone developments, and this would be classified as a standalone development if you don't have a agricultural component to it, basically can't be supported or a next use.
Councillor, the only way I can answer that question is we wouldn't be putting our names to an application which did propose some commercial agricultural component unless it was legitimate. The last thing you'd want is, perhaps based on past experiences, we say we're going to do this, that and the other, only to find that 18 months later we say it hasn't worked or there's been disease. I think the important thing about this application is that, putting aside the aesthetic aspect of retaining some vine and introducing new vine, which has not a commercial basis but a visual amenity basis, is that the opportunity to put the rest of the land to other agricultural uses in the future is not lost. My experience as a planner, in fact, growing up as a farmer, is that you can't force people to conduct an agricultural enterprise because it might fail if you try to. So Yahava Coffee, they're in the business of coffee, business that has been successful because of its location in the valley. I say to you, I'd be more concerned about this application if we were, for example, taking a smaller lot and completely building it out, or if there was numerous buildings spread out all over, which completely loses that ability for agriculture in the future. So suggesting to you that we're not proposing agriculture, that's for you and the committee to decide whether that's fundamentally problematic. But importantly, it's not lost in the future because the land remains there.
Joe, just a question. It's not relevant to the merits of this day, but just in the broader context, I am interested if you would like the opportunity to talk about what's happening with the existing land holding where Yahava is currently operating this location and whether you run agriculture on your existing lot.
Yahava Coffee are not the owners, and I don't know if you can add to anything to that because it's not part of this application, but do you know what their intentions may or may not be on your current site?
I really couldn't say. We have a lease for the next 4 years. Vacating the property, location. It's a multi-use venue. It could be used for various things. We co-tenant with an Indian restaurant right now. I would suggest it would probably be something along those lines of food and beverage.
Members, any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for your deputation this morning. Thanks for being here.
This is on item 3.2 on the agenda, which is the retrospective development application. Docking rate at lot 102 Forest Road, Henley Hook, and we are being joined by Kurt Wolf via Zoom this morning. Morning, Kurt. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry, can you hear me?
Thanks very much. We have received audio through from you. Have you got a video service there that you could turn on so we may see you on our screen?
I'm an experienced Teams user, but a first-time Zoom user. So perhaps if you can talk me through how to do it, I'd be happy to comply.
Of course. So in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, there should be an audio and a video button. There we go. You've
Is that it?
resolved it. Fabulous. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And welcome to the committee meeting this morning. Obviously, I've highlighted that you're here to talk to the committee on item 3.2 on their agenda. We'll bring up your PowerPoint presentation now and invite you to commence your deputation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I just want to start off by thanking the committee members and staff alike for the opportunity for my wife Leanne and I to provide this deputation. Just by introduction, my name is Kurt, my wife's name is Leanne Wormsley, and we are the residents of 58 Forest Road. One challenge we did have with regards to the deputation and the document that you see before you is that we actually completed it in a PowerPoint format. And unfortunately, when it came time to upload the PowerPoint, we were unable to, so we saved it as a PDF, of which case we've lost some formatting and the like. So we have prepared some statements. We're not going to read it verbatim from the deputation. We'll just take it as read. So I'll hand over to my wife, Leanne.
Yes, thank you. So just a little bit of a history. The DPLH attended this particular property at 52 Forest Road in August 24. And the landowner was advised of the stocking rate guidelines, which was 4 horses, but has now been changed by DPIRD since their assessment to 3.4. This direction was never followed by the landowner. And due to this significant overstocking of horses, we've witnessed and have been subjected to terrible land degradation, significant dust pollution, and the increase of stable fly. And you can actually refer to pictures 3, 7, and 8 to see the devastation this has had. During the summer months, easterly and southeasterly winds blow significant dust pollution directly to our property. We can't even open windows. We can't hang our washing outside to dry anymore. There's even been times where we're unable to sit outside to entertain our family and friends. One of our family members actually suffers from asthma. And they have experienced some of the worst asthma attacks they have over the past couple of summers. It's truly a horrible environment to be living in. We have many years of experience in farming, broadacre farming, and horses. And in our experienced opinion, all statements within the revised management plan, such as reducing stock numbers through the year, strip grazing, seed cropping, yarding horses for 12 hours a day, will have negligible effects on the environmental impacts. The stocking numbers of 14 horses is a whopping 400% over acceptable limits. Stocking rates of 7 horses is still in excess of 200% of the amount of accessible limit. This small land holding just cannot simply sustain this number of horses. This type of equestrian pursuit needs to be run on much, much larger acreage. The landowner has failed to comply to previous direction, and we believe, given this type of behaviour of non-compliance, none of which is stated in the revised management plan will be adhered to. The yarding of 12 horses a day on non-permeable flooring will subject us to strong smells of urine and manure due to constant saturation. These yards are 90 metres from our alfresco area. Coming from a horse background, from a welfare perspective, locking horses up for 12 hours a day in tiny yards is cruel, and it's an inhumane way to manage land. Whilst we appreciate that this revised management plan has been supported by relevant agencies, we believe, once again, given our many, many years of experience, this is simply not achievable nor feasible in protecting the environmentally sensitive area of the Swan Valley. It's already been proven. The landowner states that landscaping is not required as proposed structures are not visible by any other neighbours. This statement's incorrect. Refer to picture 6, taken from our property. Just to mention, all of this steel infrastructure as well is an absolute eyesore. It resembles minutiae livestock yards, and it's not with keeping with a rural amenity of our area. For interest's sake, 52 Forest Road is bound by 2 zoning areas. Number 1, priority agriculture. The objectives are to protect agricultural land in the Swan Valley, including vineyards and other horticultural, from incompatible land use. Such is the case we are discussing here today. This zoning does not support equestrian facility pursuits, the training and exercising of large number of horses. The Swan Valley rural zoning, however, which is much further away from our area, does encourage and support equestrian pursuits. And this is obviously closer to purpose-built facilities such as the State Equestrian Centre. 52 Forest Road also, the second zoning is flood-prone special control area. The objectives of this zoning is to protect the priority and community infrastructure from flood hazards and to protect the water quality of the Swan River. The entirety of this DA is within this zoning. And this sits within.
Yeah, sorry, it's the Chair, Emma Cole here. I just wanted to point out to you that you are now going into almost 2.5 minutes over time.
Oh, sorry.
You have your written deputation here too, so I just would ask you to make your summary comments.
Yep.
And there will also be opportunity for questions.
Sorry. Yeah. So,
I'll just quickly do the summary if I can. And I just note, and I don't know the gentleman's name, but in the last deputation, I did write down the following statement, which was a quote. This development approval does nothing for the valley or its neighbours, and it is extremely close to commercial growers that are in close proximity. As per the Swan Valley Planning Act, standalone development with no agricultural development cannot be supported. This is zoned agricultural. It's a standalone development and it has no agriculture and it's got no business in being in this zone. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Kurt and Leanne. We appreciate your comprehensive deputation that you've provided to us today. It's Emma Cole, Chair, speaking to you now. I will now open up to members to ask questions of you on your deputation.
Thank you.
thank you.
Questions, members? We don't have any questions for you, but you have raised a number of issues which we will discuss as we move through in considering this item, and you're very welcome to stay online and watch our consideration. So thank you for your time and the effort that you've put into your deputation.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
The next deputation this morning is on the same item 3.2 on the agenda, and we welcome Adrian, Lester and Vic Stein, who are here in person. Join us, please.
Adrian and Viv, please feel free to commence your deputation.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to make a comment supporting our application. We're given 3 minutes, and I'd just like to talk the first minute about some of the inconsistencies and untruths made in the comments. And then the next minute, I'd like to talk about the frequency of, and just amending condition 9, and then request the removal of condition 11 and 12 in the second and the third minute.
Look, you can have a little bit extra time given that we've just had the same for the previous. We'll be fair in our allocation of time.
I'd really like to thank Peter Wright and the various officers of the government departments who have been assisting us through the receiving comments from the complainant and various other people who have made negative comments who've basically very, very untrue. The trucks they've been saying the trucks have been entering and leaving at 3 and 4 times a day. We have one truck that leaves on Wednesday, back that evening. Same truck leaves on Thursday, comes back that evening for practice, does the same thing on Saturday and Sunday. It's not a truck yard, a commercial truck yard that they're trying to make out. One of the comments was saying there's resulting clouds of dust that would have direct impact on the health and comfort of nearby residents and businesses. Our horses, we've got up to 14 horses. We don't have 14 horses there all the time. The horses are jogged around a paddock, which is way outside the river, which is over 460 metres away from the complainant or any other resident. They're jogged around the paddock in groups of 3s and 4s between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. on Tuesday and Friday. That's the time that they create the dust. The dust is created a long way away from any resident, 460 metres, and more than 1 kilometre from any business. Now, I'd like to talk about condition number 9. I've discussed condition number 9 relates to the removal of manure from the property on a daily basis from yards and paddocks. I've discussed with the DBCA officer that who's recommended the condition, and said that, and she actually confirmed that she didn't know anything about horses. So, but she's explained why the condition was required to reduce the nutrients from the manure being transported into the groundwater and into the river. I accept the purpose of the condition. However, I just wanted to talk to you about the frequency of being required to remove your manure on a daily basis and request it to be extended to a weekly basis. Most of the horses, being the 14 horses, are there during the summer and early autumn months. Those months don't have a lot of rain. If it rains rain is required to transport the nutrients from manure into the groundwater and then into the river. And I put to the committee that the nutrients are not likely to move from the manure into the river within a week. And therefore, the request of daily removal is not likely to affect the amount of the request of the manure removal to weekly is not likely to affect the amount of nutrients going into the river. It's also not practical or achievable, and we request a recondition be amended of condition number 9 amended to weekly removal. With respect to the proposal of condition 11 and 12, it relates to landscaping for a requirement for landscaping reticulation. The sheds and horse yards are within the nature of the Swan Valley. It's a rural pursuit, which is not, while it's all about horses, it's a rural pursuit, which is within the nature of the Swan Valley zoning. There is no line of sight from the complainant at number 54's Forest Road alfresco area, and they would have to see through 2.3 metre high colorbond fence that they've put in, a large shed, a very tall tree, and 2 40-foot containers. And the landscaping is not required by the only affected neighbour. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity of addressing you this morning, and we look forward to your favourable conditions and favourable considerations being accepted.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Perhaps if I could just ask the first question, members, because it does go to the point that Adrian was raising in relation to condition 9. My understanding of condition 9 is it's not just about the nutrients, but also about controlling stable fly. I'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, so when I spoke to Josie from the DBCA, she said it was all about the nutrients flowing to the river. We accept that. We also accept stable fly. Our properties, our horses are, well, they're not the only horses in the area. The complainant has 2 horses and up to 7 cows as well. That's, yeah, are we requiring every manure in Swan Valley to be removed on a daily basis? The prevalence of flies is not an issue.
Members, perhaps also for Vic, who's attended today as a neighbour, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to comment on your experience, given that you are living in, you know, as a neighbour to property. Are you experiencing any things?
Not have any issues. We are between Adrian and Kurt and Leanne. We don't have any issues that they claim.
Members? Question?
No, I just, you asked the question. I had written down the fly.
Applies,
And
yeah.
me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vic, you wanted to respond further?
Yes, please, yes, yeah. I am the immediate northern neighbour, and I am between Adrian and I support the request to reduce the manure collection from daily to weekly. Adrian's had horses on the property for the past 2 years, and we have not had any detrimental issues with dust smell, flies, or anything else during the past 2 years. I also support the removal of conditions 11 and 12. They are not required, they're not required and they are unnecessary. I think it should also be noted that both Adrian's immediate neighbours, ourselves and the neighbours to the south, do not object to the development. My family enjoys seeing the horses on the property, and my 8 grandchildren are always keen to see the horses when they visit. I like to go up close to the fence and see them. Kurt and Leanne have been there the last couple of years. They've had between 1 horse and 7 cows, or 2 horses, 3 cows and a calf. So
Probably
I don't
particularly relevant
see
to
how
the DA before.
Adrian's horses can have an effect, but their own horses not have an effect on the issues they're having.
All right, well, thank you for your comments. As a neighbour, appreciate that you're here to comment on amenity, so appreciate that perspective to us. Are there any other questions arising from Vic's comments? No, well, thank you very much for your deputation today. And members noting that we do have in deputations 2.4, 2.5 and 2.6 are on this same matter, the permitted stocking rate at 102 Henley Brook, 102 Forest Road, Henley Brook, and those deputations are against the item before us today. So we will now move to consideration of the 2 items before us. They are both non-conforming items. So the first item that we're dealing with today is item 3.1, the development application for the food and beverage production at lot 3, West Swan Road in West Swan for determination. And we are joined by Mark. And is Sarah joining us, Mark?
No, it's Sarah's not in the office today.
Right. Mark, you've heard the deputation today. Would you like to make any additional comment to that or to your report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, look, we've worked hard with Joe and his team and looking at the design of the site. We've also met with both adjoining landowners, Mr. Newich and Mr. Lancaster, to discuss the potential impacts on their operations. We're satisfied with the recommended conditions and the design that has come about with setbacks to the car parking areas, landscaping that's going to be implemented, fencing to keep people out of the vines. That's been a little bit of an issue in the past, and a number of forms of signage to warn people to not enter the adjoining properties and that there may be spraying issues. I think further to what Joe has said, Yahava has formed a significant part of the valley in that area for quite some time. It is a food and beverage production use, which is a D use under the scheme, which means it's not required to be incidental to any agricultural use. There are a number of incidental uses that are required to be subservient to agricultural uses, but food and beverage production is not one of those. So other than that, our recommendation as presented, we support.
Thank you very much, Mark. Members, any questions of Mark? No, sorry. All right. No, go ahead, members.
I'm actually surprised that what Mark just said, that food and beverage is not or doesn't have to comply with the agricultural component. Because I was of the anyway, blows me out of the water. In page 7, I think it is, it basically says objectives of the priority agricultural zone. And it says objectives 1, 3 and 4 of the priority agricultural zone are considered relevant for this proposal. The first one is one, to protect priority agricultural land in the Swan Valley, including existing vineyards and other areas of horticulture. Two, to limit hospitality and tourism developments and land use where it's incidental to the and complements the agricultural production and does not detract from the rural character. And then three, to ensure that all land used and developed enhances the cultural heritage, natural environment, and protects a unique rural landscape. If we approve this development and it does not have any viticultural, agricultural aspects to it, as many others have or have had to do, would we be sending out a message to other viticulturalists who basically are struggling because they don't make a lot of money out of growing grapes, and saying to them, if you neglect your vineyard for a few years, the grapes are no longer viable. You can then turn your property into a commercial enterprise, and you can have food and beverage production, whatever you want, and it'll be approved. Because I can tell you there's a lot of people. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Sorry. Mark, can you answer, in your opinion, does this really comply with the objectives of the Swan Valley Planning Act as it has been revised?
Through you, Madam Chair. Look, the scheme permits this type of use, and then the aims and the objectives of the scheme seek to ensure that if this use is to be considered, that it should be developed in such a way that it does support those aims, and the aims that we've specifically meant there. So in working with the applicant, we've sought to result in a design that limits any impact, because the scheme positively supports tourism uses and other similar uses. So we're looking to ensure that it complements and works in with what's there now. Now, we actually, in discussions with Mr. Newich and Lancaster, that their preference was that vines weren't retained on the property if this was that's going to be used, because there are some problems there with having vines that aren't fully tended for production, and that they actually thought that the use of glory vines, which is what the applicant is looking to do, and maintain some of those grapes at the front where they're not directly adjoining the adjoining grapes as much, is a positive towards it. So we get character along West Swan Road of retaining some vines, and then the use of other vines somewhere else on the property to create, you know, a nice entry and to still soften the amount of development. So in terms of the way the scheme is set up, the scheme allows for this type of development. It then provides us with aims and objectives to help us in determining the best form of the development. So we think this does comply with those aims of the scheme.
Thank you very much, members Danino and Mark. Are there any other questions, members? We'll go to discussion of the item. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by member Franklin, seconded by Commissioner Brooks. Any discussion? Franklin as the mover. Right. Okay, any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to.
Danino?
I would like to speak on the item. Firstly, let me say, I fully support what the proponent has put forward. I think it's a great development and it would complement the Swan Valley. I'm not against it. All I am saying is that we need to be consistent as a committee. And by forcing or making other applicants comply with certain aspects where they have to plant a certain percentage of agricultural, whether it's vines or whatever it may be, but an agricultural component, and others not having to do that, really, look, it doesn't bother me personally. I live in the Swan Valley. I've been there a long time. I know a lot of people and I speak to them on a daily basis. And the messages they're giving me is that this is totally inconsistent. And if you want the Planning Act to work, it has to be consistent. I can recall not long ago, there was an application for a function centre and a brewery, boutique brewery, and it was on Great Northern Highway. The applicant basically said, yep, look, I'm going to have an agricultural component because I'm going to plant the back half of the property in hops, and we're going to use the hops to brew the beer, which is fine. Now, the development was approved on the basis that the agricultural component has to be developed first. So it was approved subject to the hops being planted. Once they are established, then he could build his function centre and brewery. That did not go ahead. Obviously, the proponent didn't have an interest in the agricultural side of it. That was just so that he could get approval. And like I said, you know, there's a lot of grape growers out there that aren't making a lot of money, that like to convert their properties into commercial, you know, premises where they lease it out or put in a food and beverage production. And the message that we're sending, if this is approved without an agricultural component to it, the message we're sending is neglect your vineyards, pull them out, and then you can convert your property into a commercial development. And to me, that is not the objective of the planning, the way it is written. It was specifically revised to try and do away with standalone developments, such as places of worship, service stations, and the like, and other standalone developments. Like I said, I am not against this. I support it 100%, and I think it's probably will be one of the best developments, and it will attract a lot of people and tourists to the valley. I'd like to see it approved, but I can't support it if it doesn't have some sort of agricultural component, you know, as part of the approval, because it's just going to be detrimental to the Act and future of the valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Zanino. Any other comments? You will close debate, so perhaps come to you, just make sure that no one else wishes to speak before you.
No, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, well, I'll just also make some comments if that's okay, Member Franklin, just to note that Member Zanino, I very much respect the comments you make about the priority agricultural land in the Swan Valley area. I think that it's, you know, we've had the information market and the discussion around the fact that from the land use does not require to be incidental to priority agriculture as food and beverage production. So I just do want to make that point because I think that's a very important planning consideration. I just would also like to say in relation to the application before us, I think they've been incredibly mindful in terms of making requirements around that land use in terms of the net lettable area and siting and the scale of the development for us today. And I think that in relation to the fact that they are also being very mindful of feedback through consultation in terms of setting back car parks so that they're not going to be receiving issues of spray, that they have put in additional fencing to ensure that separation from their neighbours, and that they are being very mindful of the amenity and visual amenity by staying with vines, although not productive, in terms of the rural style of the development before us today. So I would just like to say that in terms of what's required, I believe that the application meets all of the requirements and is a discretional use, and on the basis of the fact that they are citing it in this way, I believe that it is very much approvable. But I do note the issues that you raise, and they are important issues generally for the Swan Valley. Member Franklin?
Yes, just through the chair, in response to Councillor Zanino's comments, I'm wondering if there is perhaps some need to articulate indeed those kind of requirements, that there is a policy gap potentially, and if that was needed to be pursued, that it would need to be examined perhaps in a policy sense to support any future development. Rather than relying on individual fairness to a proponent, the scope and the policy requirements in respect to the matters that Councillor Zanino raised today. So I'm just putting that.
Thank you, Member Franklin. Perhaps we could discuss that further Yeah. All right, so that has closed debate. So I'll just see if there's any dissent to the development. No dissent. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, so we're now on item 3.2, which is the retrospective development application for exceeding permitted stocking rate at lot 102 Forest Road in Henry. And Mark, I imagine you're leading off on this one too.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so I have Peter here, who is the assessing officer.
Thank you, Peter.
In this instance, obviously, we've considered the application that's before us, the level of development. We're not obviously experts at in the environmental issues related to the stocking rate. That has been deferred by us to
DPIRD and DBCA and DWIR.
So all three have been consulted, particularly in relation to the application of the management plan for the site. They have all supported it as it stands. In terms of the actual physical development on the site, it's not unusual in this zone. The both priority agricultural and Swan Valley rural zone, although that's not this particular use, both have equestrian facilities as permissible uses in the zone. So the use of the land for equestrian style activities or keeping of horses, which is considered as a what do we call it, Peter? It's a rural pursuit hobby farm, is permissible. And in this case, as I say, we've deferred to the other departments who've found that the land management techniques will be enough to mitigate any issues on the site from an environmental point of view. In terms of the issues raised regarding the modifications of conditions, I'm not sure exactly what we would do about that. We may have to look at that in more detail and perhaps get further comments on it if they are to be seriously considered by them.
I'm sorry, we don't take any further comments or questions at this stage. We're now in question and answer for the committee and deliberations.
It's just that you asked me about the life cycle of stable fly. I've just Googled it. It's 13 to 18 days.
Thank you. All right, members, questions?
Yeah, just
Commissioner Brooks.
the point of clarification on condition 9, which is the manure collection, and so it's manure collection from the land and the yards and storage within the site, removal from site on a daily basis. They're collecting it daily, storing it, and then either using it on site or having it removed. Yeah. Thank you.
Mark, on that same point. So, sorry, Member Franklin. I'll come to you very shortly. Just on that same point, was any consideration given to data collection at that very intensive stock holding time versus the lesser intensive stock time, or is it deemed to be necessary at all times of the year?
Madam Chair, I'd have to check with Peter if on the details.
Not specifically, but it would only be appropriate when horses are there, and when horses are there, there's going to be up to 14 horses at a time. I will mention that DBCA confirmed on Monday that they require that collection.
Thank you. Member Frank.
Yes, I've just in through the chair. It was noted that it's a revised management plan that was had. Was the format and scope in response to certain guidance to the proponent on what was included in the management plan?
For you, Madam Chair, just again, if I defer to Peter on that one.
Yeah, we because it's excess stock over the stocking rate, we referred it to DPIRD, and now it was negotiations and information exchange between the applicant and DPIRD and myself to get it to a plan that DPIRD said was acceptable.
Right. Okay. So it was a collaborative effort.
Yes.
The only note of how it relates to the actual plan, there is actually no actual thematic or plan included in the document, and it actually refers to infrastructure and so forth. Wondering if there is that is implied by this development approval, but going forward, the implementation of that plan could be somewhat compromised if it doesn't have a plan attached.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, certainly the consulted agencies were given a copy of the application itself, which included the DA documents. So if there's no direct reference to that, that's certainly something that could be amended and mentioned or somehow put on as an addendum or.
Any other questions? We're happy
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah. No, I just to Mark, there are a lot of properties within the Swan Valley Planning Act area and predominantly in the priority agricultural zone that have stock on them. And they're actually having to comply with appropriate stocking rates. If this was approved, does it or would it create a precedence in the sense that other people that do have stock would say, well, okay, well, I can only keep 3 or 4 horses or 5 sheep or whatever it may be. Well, I can put in an application and I can put 20 or 30 because obviously this has been approved. Then why would they refuse my application? Does it create a precedent?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the question there, councillors. And yeah, look, the information, there's quite a bit of information provided on DPIRD and council's websites that discuss the base stocking rate. So the base stocking rate is a very simple calculation based on the quality of the soils, available rainfall, all those sort of things. And then it does very specifically provide information about how and what you can do to make your land more suitable for a greater number of stock. So I'd suggest that probably 50% of the horse carrying properties in the valley would already be on a higher than the base stocking rate because it's very, very low. In that northeastern section of the valley where there are a lot of equestrian properties, they would you say they're mostly all over the base stocking rate? Because the base stocking rate comes down to about 1 horse per hectare. It's very low. And so most of those people have in place management plans to allow them. Right? So that's already in place and there is a lot of approved management plans for the area.
A further question, this property backs onto the Swan River. The majority of the property is within the 100-year floodplain. And it's in obviously the priority agricultural zone. How can this application be compatible with the rural character and the priority agricultural zone and the amenity of adjoining landowners? I mean, if it complied with the stocking rate, which is the permissible one, which is 3.4 or 4 horses, that's fine. I don't think anyone would be complaining. But going from 4 to 14 obviously needs a lot more infrastructure. It creates a lot more nuisance aspects like flies, dust, smell, whatever. Can you tell me how this would actually comply?
Through you, Madam Chair. Quite simply, the scheme permits this use. It permits equestrian uses. Therefore, it's something that can be considered. We've deferred in terms of the environmental issues to other departments where they have that expertise. They have provided support for the management of the site to accommodate this number of horses. And we think those other issues that may impact the amenity of the area through that management plan have been addressed in terms of dust, flies, and if that management plan is adhered to, and those departments have advised us that it's suitable.
Wouldn't this development would be better suited if it was not in the priority agricultural zone, but in the Swan Valley zone, which is on the east side of the railway line, where a lot of equine facilities are, and it would be closer to the State Equestrian Centre. That would be the more appropriate area for this sort of development to be developed. And shouldn't we be encouraging this sort of development to occur in that other locality rather than their priority agriculture?
Through you, Madam Chair, as the scheme stands, it's a use that can be contemplated in the area. The application has been made to us, which we've assessed on that area. If the committee was of the mind to look at the broader strategic planning issues of where this type of development may be better suited, that would be through perhaps the strategy, scheme reviews, scheme amendments.
Other question? Okay, we'll move discussion then. If I could please have a mover and second. Moved by Commissioner Brooks. Or second. Commissioner Brooks, any discussion?
Just to comment on the conditions that were to be modified. I think it's really important that we keep 9 as it's written. That will have been consideration in terms of protection of the Swan River, water quality, and also amenity for the surrounding community. And again, conditions 11 and 12, I don't think we should be touching because there are important measures for maintaining amenity in the. That was really all I wanted to comment. It's just keeping those conditions as written.
Thank you, Commissioner Brooks. Are there any other?
No, I would like to put in dissent.
Okay, well, not quite
But,
there.
yes.
But noted. Members and any?
Yes, I'd like to. Look, I understand where the applicant is coming from, and I sympathise with him. I dare say that if it was in a different location, I could give this my full support, but unfortunately being in the location that it is, I can't support it. And once again, it's in the priority agricultural zone, and that area, you know, has better use than rather for using for stock or whatever. There are a lot of businesses located within close proximity that do comply with the Planning Act and the objectives. Unfortunately, this does create a nuisance in the sense that it does create dust in the drier months in summer, autumn. it does create flies, and flies, once they breed, they fly, they don't stay in the same location. And you do have food and beverage operators in close proximity. You've got vineyards. And I think that, having the appropriate stocking rate, which is 3 or 4 horses, even 5 or 6 horses, can be, supported. But once you start getting over 6 or 7, to 14, it does create a problem. The smell, I used to have a equine facility next door to me. It was a trotting facility, and they had, I think it was about 15 or 16 horses. They had the trotting track, and it was right on my boundary. And I can tell you, the smell, the flies, the dust, it's there on a daily basis. And, okay, in the winter months, you don't get the dust, but the flies and the smell you get all year round, unfortunately. So I just think that it's not appropriate to have an overstocking rate of 14 horses on this property, and especially being on the floodplain, so I can't support it.
Thank you, Member Zanino. Are there any other comments? Member Franklin?
How this can be incorporated, but getting back to my earlier comment in regards to condition 2, if we're going forward approving this application, I'd be proposing that the management plan be a location plan setting out the infrastructure that it requires.
Yes, so in terms of words, would you like to amend condition 2?
Yes.
To add perhaps some additional wording before the final sentence?
Yes, so probably, well, we've got a plan that will be date stamped 16th of December. That probably would need to be amended. And it should also include the matters that are attended to in the conditions, including infrastructure.
So would you like the wording to be after the wording management plan date stamped 16th of December 2024 as amended to incorporate? It probably need to be very specific.
Yeah. The infrastructure revenue in
which condition number are you referring to? Or it's note?
I don't know. Can you help me here?
Yes, Madam Chair, if perhaps we could say something along the lines of as amended to incorporate relevant plans that show the approved infrastructure on the site.
Yeah.
Seconded by Commissioner Brooks. Thank you.
We need to identify that you would approve the chair would approve the amendments.
Is it necessary, Mark, for the amendments to be approved, or are you happy to have it just as taken as that plus the additional infrastructure information? Does it need to be as approved by the chair?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not too sure. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Any advice from our Chief Planning Advisor, perhaps?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Generally, it's advisable statutory decision that you are very clear about A, what you want, and B, how the applicant is to achieve that, and C, what certainty the applicant can be given if they have achieved that. So that typically would be some form of sign-off. That isn't, I'm not intimately familiar with delegations under the Clonmel Planning Scheme, who the executive director, like, who's far more familiar. I'm not sure whether that's something that is currently a delegation or whether that's something that comes through yourself.
Any comments, Mr. Selby?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, we have the delegations to be able to deal with that matter.
About it being to the satisfaction.
Actually referring
Yeah.
back to the commission or yourself for additional sign off.
Satisfied with the word? Okay, thank you. Is there any dissent to the amendment? Substantive motion yet, dissent? Okay, that is now amended. So we are now back to the amended substantive motion. Is there any further discussion? I'll just make some comments because we have heard from different views of neighbours today with different experiences. And I think that we need to acknowledge that and to note that those understand that they're very valid experiences and very different. In relation to the application before us today, there is an intensification in terms of the stocking of horses, and I think that the conditions which have been reviewed by DPERD DUA, they are very stringent, and the intent for that is to deal with a number of the issues that have been raised, not just by neighbours, but in terms of concerns more generally about, if we are going to look at overstocking, then there has to be certain strict and stringent conditions in place. And I note that the applicant has requested for the removal of certain conditions around landscaping, etc., and also a collection frequency of a week as opposed to daily for collection of manure. And I think we're very clear on why that has to happen. It's not just about nutrients, it's also about stable fly. So I'm taking the advice from DUA in terms of the management plan. It must be adhered to in relation to does then come outside of this process if that's not the case. But on the basis of the advice from DPERD, I'm satisfied that we can move forward with the application today. Any further comments before vote? Is there any dissent? Dissent from Zanina and Hurt. Sorry, I was going to say Hart. Thank you very much, Member Hurt. Thank you very much. That is carried, but noting consent, which will be recorded in the minutes.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. All right, so that concludes our public meeting for today, but we do need to go behind closed doors for confidential items. So can I please have a mover and seconder that we move to closed doors for consideration of confidential items? It really just leaves us with urgent.